11 weirdest cars ever made in the world. Welcome back, car fans. Thanks for being here with Classic American Auto. Let's dive into the world of the weirdest cars ever made. When it comes to cars, you've got your everyday sedans, your sports cars, your trucks, but then there are some cars that just make you stop and go, what were they thinking? These cars didn't just push the envelope, they threw that envelope right out the window. From bizarre designs to oddball engineering, here are 11 of the weirdest cars ever made. Number 11. 1973 Reliant Robin is probably the first car that comes to mind when people think of weird cars. Why? Because it's a three-wheeler. Yeah, this British oddball had 2 wheels in the back and just 1 up front, which made for some seriously questionable handling. The thing tipped over if you so much as sneezed while turning a corner. Despite its strange setup, the Reliant Robin was beloved by some because it was incredibly cheap to own and run. It had a modest 850cc engine that made about 40 horsepower, and it could hit a top speed of around 85 miles per hour. But let's be real, you didn't want to push this car to its limits. It came with a 4-speed manual gearbox, and while the body was lightweight and the car got great fuel economy, most people remember it for its infamous rollovers. Number 10. 1956 BMW Isetta, which looks more like a cartoon character than a car. This bubble car was originally designed by an Italian company, but BMW bought the rights and turned it into their own. The Isetta had a single front door that swung out like a refrigerator door, which honestly made getting in and out of this thing half the fun. It only had 3 wheels on most models, though some had 4, and it was powered by a tiny 298cc engine that made about 13 horsepower. With a top speed of just 50 miles per hour, this thing wasn't going to win any races, but people loved the Isetta because it was cheap and small, perfect for getting around crowded European cities. The gearbox was a 4-speed manual, and the car's unique design made it stand out in a world of big, boxy sedans. Number 9. 1975 AMC Pacer, a car so odd-looking that it's often referred to as the fishbowl on wheels. AMC wanted to make a futuristic compact car, and they certainly succeeded in making something that looked like nothing else on the road. The Pacer was wide, squat, and had more glass than some greenhouses. People loved or hated the Pacer because of its quirky looks and spacious interior. It came with several engine options, the most powerful being a 258 cubic inch inline-6 that made around 120 horsepower. It had a 3-speed automatic transmission and could hit a top speed of about 100 miles per hour. But let's face it, nobody was buying a Pacer for performance. It was all about the oddball design and the fact that it had a look no other car could match. Number 8. 1958 Zundap Janus is another bubble car that had people scratching their heads. What made this German car weird wasn't just its small size, but the fact that it had 2 doors, one in the front and one in the back, and they were identical. This meant the driver and passenger faced forward, while the folks in the back seat faced rearward. Talk about a car with split personality. It was powered by a 245cc engine that made a whopping 14 horsepower. With a top speed of around 50 miles per hour, this thing was definitely not built for speed. It had a 4-speed manual transmission, and its odd seating arrangement is what made people either love it or loathe it. You either thought it was charming, or you wondered what the heck was going on with this thing. Hey, if you're enjoying this so far, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. Number 7. 1948 Tasco, short for the American Sports Car Company, was a one-off prototype that looked like it was straight out of a science fiction comic book. This thing had fender skirts that fully enclosed its wheels and an airplane-inspired cockpit with a roof you could remove in sections. The designers wanted it to look like a cross between a car and an airplane, and boy did they succeed. The Tasco was powered by a 5.4-liter V8 engine It produced around 135 horsepower, which wasn't too shabby for the 1940s. Its top speed was about 100 miles per hour, and it had a 3-speed manual transmission. Unfortunately, the car never went into production, but it's remembered today for its incredibly futuristic design and for being one of the first cars to feature a T-top roof. Number 6. 1974 Volkswagen Thing, also known as the Type 181, is exactly what it sounds like, a Thing. This boxy, military-inspired vehicle looked like a cross between a Jeep and a toaster on wheels. It was originally designed for military use, but Volkswagen decided to sell it to the public in the 1970s. It was simple, rugged, and about as no-frills as you could get. Under the hood, the Thing had a 1.6-liter flat-4 engine that made around 46 horsepower, which meant it wasn't fast. Top speed was about 68 miles per hour. It came with a 4-speed manual transmission, and while it didn't win any beauty contests, people loved the Thing for its off-road capability and its go-anywhere, do-anything attitude. Plus, you could strip it down and hose it out if it got dirty. Now that's a car with character. Number 5. 1973 Citroën SM is one of the weirdest yet coolest cars to come out of France. Citroën wanted to create a grand touring car that combined luxury and performance, and what they came up with was unique. The SM had a spaceship-like design with a sloping roofline, covered headlights, and a hydro-pneumatic suspension system that made it feel like you were driving on clouds. It was powered by a Maserati-sourced 2.7-liter V6 engine that made 170 horsepower, which allowed it to hit a top speed of about 140 miles per hour. The SM came with a 5-speed manual transmission and was loved for its smooth ride, quirky design, and advanced technology, though it could be a bit finicky and expensive to maintain. Still, for those who wanted something truly different, the Citroën SM delivered. Number 4. 1961 Amphicar. What's weirder than a car? A car that's also a boat. The 1961 Amphicar was a vehicle that you could drive straight into a lake and keep on going. That's right, it could drive on land and water. The Amphicar was powered by a 1.1-liter Triumph engine that made around 43 horsepower. On land, it could hit a top speed of about 70 miles per hour, but once you hit the water, you were looking at a max speed about 7 knots. It had a 4-speed manual transmission for driving on land and a separate system for the propellers when you were on the water. People loved the Amphicar because it was a car that broke all the rules. You didn't have to choose between land and water, you could do both. Today, they're incredibly rare and highly sought after by collectors. Number 3. 1947 Davis Divan is one of the strangest cars ever made and only had 3 wheels. But in California, the Divan was a low-slung, futuristic-looking car with a wide front and narrow rear, almost like an airplane without wings. The idea was to create a car that was affordable, futuristic, and easy to drive. It was powered by a 2.6-liter Hercules engine that made about 47 horsepower. Top speed was around 80 miles per hour, and it came with a 3-speed manual transmission. What made the Divan weird wasn't just the 3-wheel design, but the fact that it was supposed to seat 4 people in a single bench-style seat. Unfortunately, the company behind the car went bankrupt after only about 13 were made, but the Davis Divan remains a weird and wonderful piece of automotive history. Number 2. 1970 Marcos Mantis was a British company known for making unusual sports cars, and the Mantis was no exception. With its angular, wedge-shaped design and low stance, the Mantis looked like it was ready for the track. But here's the thing, it wasn't just a race car, it was also a 2+2 Grand Tourer, meaning it had a back seat, so you wouldn't want to sit back there for long. It was powered by a 3-liter Triumph straight-6 engine that made about 140 horsepower. It had a top speed of around 120 miles per hour and came with a 5-speed manual transmission. What made the Mantis weird wasn't just its design, but the fact that it was trying to be both a sports car and a family car at the same time. It didn't quite succeed in either department, but it's remembered today for its quirky design and ambitious goals. Number 1. The Ferrari Modulo is one of the wildest, most futuristic-looking cars ever made. This concept car from 1970 looks like it came straight out of a sci-fi movie with its ultra-low, spaceship-like body. The thing sits just a few feet off the ground, with a canopy-style roof that slides forward to let you in. No traditional doors here. Under the hood, the Modulo packs a monstrous 5.0-liter V12 engine that cranks out 550 horsepower and 331 pound-feet of torque. This beast could hit a top speed of 220 miles per hour, which was mind-blowing back in the day. It had a 5-speed manual gearbox to match all that power. People loved the Modulo not just for its raw performance, but for its futuristic design and the fact that it was way ahead of its time. It's not a traditional American muscle car, but it's definitely a standout in automotive history. These 11 cars are a testament to the fact that the automotive world is full of innovation, creativity, and, well, weirdness. From three-wheelers to amphibious vehicles, these cars dared to be different, and while some were more successful than others, they all have a place in automotive history. Whether you love them for their quirkiness or just appreciate the sheer audacity of their designs, these cars remind us that sometimes it's the weird ones that leave the biggest impact.